Just like success, failure has its own definitions. Someone said that failure is actually also in the eyes of the beholder. Just like there are 7 billion or more definitions of success, there is 7 billion or more definitions of failure as well. It reminds me of my own example. When I graduated from college, I got my master's degree, I was ready to conquer the world and go learn. I took my first job and I spent a few years at that first job. And eventually I realized that I saw so many people leaving, getting to a better company, getting a better job, getting a better pay. So I decided that that is probably gonna be good for me as well, so I should make a move. And I decided to move from Massachusetts to New Jersey, and I found a new job where I presented myself as the best candidate for that job, and I did get hired. And they loved me, and they said that they would want me to start. And when I started, few months into the job, I realized that it was not a good fit for me. And the reason I realized that was because I had an expectation set for myself. So I thought that since I learned in my first job, I can get to the second job and maybe learn as much, and also meet the expectations that I had set for myself, or the expectations that others had for me. When I got that job, I was told that I would be a good fit, and so I got it. I got a good salary and I decided to move. 6 months into the job, I got fired. Yes, setting an expectation that I could not achieve, or an expectation that someone else set for me and I still could not achieve it. For some, it could just be getting fired from a job, so it makes a failure. For someone, not being able to have a successful marriage relationship, and that would be a failure. For a guy who's an entrepreneur and he's running his own business and eventually he has to close his doors, for him, that is a failure. But the key aspect is to actually understand that no matter what you define it as, rejection, giving up, as failure, you can always have a perspective on what that failure really means to you. And that is also going to be your individual perspective. So just like we want success in different domains of life, we also see failure as a part of that success. As a part of that achievement, there are some roadblocks that we go through and we define them as our failure. So not meeting the expectation that you set for yourselves or others set for you or others have from you, that would define as what failure means. One of the interviews that I was watching online when Oprah was talking about her being fired from her job because she was classified as unfit for television. So I'm pretty sure that Oprah's example is one type of failure where it's a professional lack of meeting the expectations that others might have from her or she might have set for herself. So being unfit for a position does not necessarily make it a failure. You can look at it as a failure. It would be your definition how you define that failure. Someone who goes to college and halfway through they quit or they quit from school, a lot of people look at that as a failure. So for the person who was not able to either finish school or college, for them, that would be a failure in their life. They can explain that as one of the failure stories of their life. So it all depends on what your perception is, how you view your failure, and that is how you will define it as well. So Tony Robbins actually had a quote that there are no failures, there are only results. And that fits in well with the example that I said before, like Oprah was called unfit for TV, and that's how she was fired from her job as well. If you look at that from the perspective of a result, that would be classified as a negative result. Something that is unfavorable for you, something that did not go per your plan, something that you expected yourself to do or be better at, and you could not. And that would be an unfavorable result, a negative result. You might have your own story of failure. You might have tried to make your relationship work with someone and it perhaps fell apart. And you would define that as a failure. If you were rejected in a relationship, you could call that as a failure as well. And not being able to meet your mark is probably going to be your way of defining what failure means to you. If you were at a job and you had great expectations, or people at job had great expectations from you, but you got fired, you might define that as an example of your failure. So you will always have your own specific, your own tailored definition of failure as well, just like success. It all depends on the circumstances you're in. It all depends on the situations you're in. And that will define what your failure meaning is, how you look at failure as well. And remember, in finding excellence, there is no failure.